I asked you to think about a Subaru, I bet you're thinking about the Impreza. Of course, Subaru made a name for themselves within rallying, but their current lineup of SUVs in the UK couldn't be any further away from rally cars. The Subaru Forester has been around for 25 years, and in that time it's grown gracefully, some would argue slowly. They've not changed too much to the recipe. It's still a boxy, roomy and capable family SUV. And it was an SUV before SUVs were cool. The 6th generation Forester is new for 2025 and is effectively a heavy facelift on the car that came before it. Changes include a new exterior and interior design, as well as mechanical upgrades to improve the way it both drives on and off-road. CEO Lorraine Bishton, who joined a year ago, says that by the end of 2026 the company will be selling 3 EV models in the UK. Indeed, by 2028, Subaru will have 8 EVs to sell globally. Although the company's long-time importer, Solihull-based International Motors Group, is still deciding which models to choose. In the meantime, Subaru customers show extreme loyalty, with 70% of Subarus being bought already being existing customers. They like the capability, the durability and the reliability of the brand. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you all of those changes to the 2025 Subaru Forester. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you do like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So first of all, why don't we jump behind the wheel and I'll tell you everything that's changed with the new Forester. The Forester actually only comes with one engine option, and that's a 134 brake horsepower 2-litre mild hybrid petrol engine that uses a small electric motor for extra power when accelerating. This is why it's called the Subaru Forester E-Boxer. Unlike some mild hybrids, it can actually solely run on electric power at lower speeds, like when manoeuvring in traffic. And while the hybrid system is meant to give you a boost of power, the engine does struggle slightly and it takes a slow 12.2 seconds to get from 0 to 62 miles per hour, which is slower than many of its competitors, including the Hyundai Tucson and the Kia Sportage. In everyday driving, you will need to press quite hard on the accelerator to be able to get up to a good speed, and it's disappointing that there isn't a more powerful hybrid option available. But actually, if you're keeping to lower speeds most of the time, I really haven't found it to be an issue at all. The Forester only has a CVT automatic gearbox, which tends to keep the engine revs quite high during acceleration, so that does make it a little bit noisy. However, it's not the loudest CVT out there, and Subaru has actually added some features to mimic traditional gear shifts and to reduce the noise inside the car. Of course, a key feature of Subaru vehicles is their standard 4-wheel drive, which is great for those that are living in more rural areas or places with harsher weather. The Forester also has good ground clearance, and it also gets an X mode, and this is for off-road driving conditions like snow and mud. I've actually found that it handles well with minimal body lean in corners and decent grip. The ride is smoother than something like a Mazda CX-5, making it capable over bumps, although the steering can feel a little bit vague at higher speeds. Additionally, you may notice more wind and road noise if you compare it to something like perhaps the Volvo XC40. If you really want to get down to the details of this latest facelift, then there has been a fair amount of tweaks to the way that it drives. Now, these include a 10% improvement in chassis rigidity, and there's also up to 44% less head toss from more tightly controlled suspension, a calculated 39% less interior noise on the move, and there's a lower line from the roof window, which means that it's 40mm lower, and that gives you better visibility as well. Whether you find this car slow or not completely depends on where you're driving it, because if you're just taking back roads like I am now, when you're at lower speeds between 30 and 40 and getting up to that 60 very, very slowly, then you'll probably find it absolutely fine. I haven't found that I needed any more power when I was driving around these back roads. The issue is when you need to quickly change from going slower to quicker. So if you're joining a dual carriageway, you will find that it starts to feel quite sluggish. You're almost putting your foot to the floor and waiting for just a bit more of a burst of power. But I'm not saying that it's dangerously slow. It joins motorways absolutely fine. It has no issues taking over, especially if you're taking over slowing moving vehicles, but it's definitely something to be aware of. And if you do want something which feels like it packs a bit of a punch, then perhaps you need to look at some of its competitors. As I mentioned, this latest generation car gets an all new look for the exterior, but actually it still fully remains its styling as a Subaru Forester. You're definitely not going to get this confused with the previous generation, and I think that's a good thing. It's certainly grown up a little bit, but it has lost a tiny bit of its personality, and I do think when you compare it to something like a Honda CR-V, that car has moved into a new generation of looking much sleeker. This definitely looks sleeker than the outgoing model, but it still is a touch on the safe side, although I'm sure that's what keeps Subaru owners coming back and back. Let me know what you think of the design down below. But what has changed? Well, I'll point out a few things. You've got new lighting signatures. So before, the lights sat separate from the grille. Now, this lighting signature blends together with this silver bar which runs along the centre, which is separated by the Subaru badge. That gives it a much sleeker look. You also now have the fog lights, which are pushed to the side of the car rather than being towards the middle. But overall, it just gets a bit of a nip and tuck here, there and everywhere. On this top spec car, you get 19-inch alloy wheels, and you also now have these squared off wheel arches. So previously, everything was a lot rounder, but it's slightly more angular for this latest generation. I really quite like it. So what about in the interior? Interior changes definitely mimic the exterior changes. So everything's been made a bit simpler. So it's less busy than it was in its outgoing model. And that's made it look sleeker and more modern, although it does still definitely have an old school approach. But Subarus have always been known for being hard wearing. So you find a lot of harder wearing plastics and materials on the inside, and sticking with that sometimes makes them feel less modern. You do, however, have a big upgrade, which is this new central touchscreen. It's been stretched to be much longer than the previous generation. You still had a portrait screen, however, you did have physical climate control dials underneath. Unfortunately, those physical dials have gone in favour of the larger screen. You do have shortcuts on the left-hand side and right-hand side to be able to turn up and down the temperature in the cabin, which is better than nothing. But I really think a lot of previous generation customers will definitely miss those tactile scrollers. The touchscreen works okay, it's not the best system, and I have found some things to be slightly awkward. For instance, if you're trying to set your satellite navigation whilst driving, it doesn't let you use the keyboard, but if you try to use the voice command,
please say a command.
Get me directions to Bury St Edmunds.
Say the house number, street and city.
No.
No. Now would you like to start route guidance to the city centre?
Yes.
Starting route guidance.
Wherever we're going, it's going to get us there at 8 p.m, so that's good. You have to use it by name and address rather than just location, so it won't take you to a central area, which is annoying, and also the voice control is not particularly brilliant. However, it does get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which are both wireless, and when you're using Siri with those systems, it is much better. Higher spec models do also get what-free words built into the satellite navigation, so if you remember to set it before you actually start driving, I think you'll find it more than helpful enough, but it does still feel a little bit old school in its approach to its design of the screen. Elsewhere in this cabin, materials feel good. You've got levers across the dashboard, you have these leather and Alcantara seats, And you do still have this leather-wrapped Subaru steering wheel with lots of easy-to-touch buttons on either side of the wheel. Interestingly enough, you don't get a fully digital dashboard on the new Subaru, you just get a digitalised centre, and then you have your standard dials on either side. But let me know, does that bother you or not? Storage is pretty good. So down this centre console, you actually have some wireless charging. You'll find USB and USB-C chargers, so both options, which I actually prefer. You've got cup holders, which will hold larger bottles of water, and they shouldn't get in the way of the gear stick or the armrest, which I think is brilliant. You have a nice amount of storage inside of the armrest. You've got a decent sized glove box, which can easily fit a large car logbook inside of there, or if you're putting that somewhere else, you can fit lots in the glove box. You also get really big door cards, which can also fit a large bottle of water, and you do still get a glasses holder on top of the roof as well. One of my favourite features about this car, however, is these sun visors. So these sun visors here, you pull them down and you've got your standard visor with the mirror and the light, and you've also got a mirror and a light on the driver's side as well. But what you've got on these visors is you've got these extensions on both sides of the car. Now what these do is they block out more of the light, so whether we want to block out more light coming through the front windscreen, or you can pull it off and then you can pull it across and you can use that on your passenger's side window, which I think is super helpful. I know this is probably on a load of cars, but it's something that I haven't seen before. So space for front passengers is pretty good, but what about in the back? Online, this car gets compared a lot to things like the Hyundai Tucson or perhaps the Kia Sportage, but in my mind, this is a much larger car. It's far more accommodating and it's a bit more hard wearing. So with those cars, you tend to get slightly squishier interiors where there isn't quite as much space, whereas this feels much more stripped back. You get much more boxy interior space, and though it doesn't have all of the amenities of some of its competitors, it's still very good. Inside of here, I've actually got heated seats in the rear, and I've still got these nice leather and Alcantara seats as well. I've also got access to a USB and USB-C charger, and on the backs of these seats I've got a map pocket, but I've also got two more pockets as well. Each of these can actually hold your mobile phone, which is really handy, and many of this car's competitors don't have simple things like that. Now, when it comes to these seats, they don't only split in a 60-40, which is slightly disappointing, and it does have an armrest, and that can just be found here, but it's pretty thin. It doesn't particularly feel that durable. The cup holders are okay. They've got little spongy bits to hold smaller cups in place. I can't see that being too much of an issue, but it doesn't have anything fancy like any device holders or anywhere to pop items away. I've got ISOFIX fitments on both of the outer sides of these seats. I've got a nice amount of storage inside the doors, and I've also got a bit more storage where you use the handle for the door as well. It feels very, very spacious, and I think that's the best thing about this car. I've got plenty of headroom, and I've got loads and loads of legroom, and I've also got loads of centre legroom as well, because even this central bench here is completely flat. So if I slide across, it's still as comfortable as sitting on the sides, and I can easily tuck my feet behind this centre console. So it's a very, very practical place for families. These doors also open at 90-degree angles, so it's easy to get child seats in. So what about the boot? And the redesign from the front has also continued around the back of the Forester. It's slightly simpler and just has a sleeker look, especially in this specification where you've got the dark grey mixed together with some of the black badges like on this Subaru badge. It definitely gives it a stealthy, cleaner look. Once again, you've got redesigned lights, and you did have a chunkier piece of plastic in the centre. This is now a sleeker gloss black bar, and then you have the Subaru badge in the centre, which is now 3D within that bar rather than just sitting on top. You also have Forester, which is now embossed underneath this central bar. But you still have that really boxy shape almost estate-like, which gives it a ton of boot space. So inside the boot of the Forester, you will find 508 litres. Now that is one of the best in class, and it's also super practical. You'll always find that people with dogs are big fans of Subarus because you have this really wide practical opening, which is really easy for getting animals and items inside. You've also got a completely flat boot floor. You do have this piece of plastic which runs along the top, but you might want to get a boot cover if you don't want to get your paintwork scratched up, as there is a little bit of that at the bottom. You get a retractable parcel shelf inside here, which feels nice quality, and underneath the boot floor you have a little bit of storage, which is good for popping away any of your valuables. You also have a few different things on the sides of the boot, which include hooks to be able to hang your shopping. You've also got electrically deployable rear seats, which is super handy if you're using this as a van and you need to drop those down quickly and you've got your hands full. You can simply click that and it will electrically drop down that rear seat, which is super handy. You've also got some 12-volt charging, and just overall it's a super practical space. So the Subaru Forester certainly hasn't undergone the radical redesign that we've seen from the likes of the Hyundai Santa Fe and even the Honda CR-V. This, despite having tweaks to the exterior and interior, very much looks like the Subaru Forester that customers know and love. But is it enough to keep this model competitive from the rest of the market? There are some very capable four-wheel drive SUVs out there, but perhaps none do it quite like the Subaru Forester. Let me know all of your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. Are you an existing Subaru owner? Why do you love the brand so much? I really hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys, see you later.